everybody's looking for a solution to get away from riba. Everybody thinks Islamic banking is a savior, which it clearly isn't. What do I do?
Well, you have to enlarge the picture, and you have to see that banking, Islamic banking, is part of banking, which is part of central banking, which is part of the monetary system, which is part of the IMF, which is part of the World Bank, which is part of the capitalism.
But what's wrong with the IMF? You need a banking system to run the economy. You need to be able to put your money into a bank. You can't run the world without a bank. You can't operate business without banks. If we became fundamental and went back to trading in gold and silver, we wouldn't be able to do transactions in millions and billions. So it sounds like you're saying go back to this organic method or system, but then it doesn't sound very practical. So what do we do?
But it's interesting, I mean, this commentary, because this commentary doesn't come, I have encountered it through the years, but only in the Muslim countries. I never encountered it when I speak about it in Europe. It uses gold and silver. People refer as the future. And there is, in fact, a lot of people saying the US dollar is a fraud and we have to go to gold and silver. So that the understanding of gold and silver as something backwards is almost a psychological condition rather than a rational argument.
Okay.
Gold and silver has been the currency of the world for 5,000 years, and we had a good time with gold and silver, we the Muslims.
Okay.
What happens with gold and silver, unlike paper money, is that you cannot create it out of nothing. The reason why we want gold and silver is not because we have a fetish on gold or silver, because we don't. We don't care. Gold is the same as a piece of wood. The question is freedom. Now, freedom cannot be
decentralized, right?
No, freedom. The fact that you have a choice or you don't have a choice. We take for granted that now when you are born inside Pakistan, somebody has to tell you what the currency of Pakistan is. And you have to endure it whether you like it or not. But that principle of the capacity to choose your medium of exchange is a fundamental part of trading. Tijaratun an taradin minkum. Trade with mutual consent. What is the mutual consent when it comes to the most important commodity? Money. So throughout 5,000 years of human history, people have chosen freely. And they have chosen gold, they have chosen silver, sometimes they have chosen salt, the currency of the
As
Tuareg.
a commodity, they've chosen freely. But now it's been forced upon us because we don't get to choose a currency that we can
Exactly.
trade in.
And that is not a question of being obsolete or being modern. It's a question of fundamental understanding of who you are, whether you are a slave or you are.
But people say, okay, we have this. You talk about paper money a lot. People say, well, what's the difference between $1 and a piece of gold? It's still a form of payment. Just because you have more paper, or you have, gold is only has intrinsic value because of its scarcity or its rarity. There's no different, whether I give somebody a piece of paper to buy something or whether I give them a gold coin, it's the same thing that's happening.
Well, that again depends on how far you want to look. If you look at the sun, you can say we are the center of the universe and the sun rotates around us. When you extrapolate the figures and you look a little bit from the perspective, you realize the sun is static and we go around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing. You can say gold and silver and individual transaction may operate the same, but hold on a minute. There is a lot more to the subject. First of all, the dollar is produced by one country in the world. Mm-hmm. So the United States has the unique privilege to produce the currency of the world. Mm-hmm. In other words, they can offer to the rest of the world pieces of paper that they can create out of nothing, and we give them oil, aluminium, gas, etc., etc. When they want more, they print more. Well, you don't have to be a genius to realize that there is something wrong with this. Because gold doesn't have a nationality. Mm-hmm. Nobody can create more of these entities. So there was, in terms of fairness, a system whereby if you play Monopoly with your friend, and your friend has the unique ability to create money at his wish,
then he's always got
he's going to win. It doesn't matter what you do. Okay. Well, if you can understand that, then you can understand the difference between gold and the US dollar.
Okay.
But that's not only the case. Mm-hmm. The reason why we have the US dollar is not because the whole world has come into an agreement. This is the result of two world wars, and the enforcement of the winning nations over the rest of the world, the imposing of a system. When the Muslim country became independent, they already came independent within a system. So it is not a coincidence that all the constitutions, without exception, they all have the same three common elements. And you can find it in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and you can find it in the United States, and you can find it anywhere. Paper money, central bank, and national debt. These are the sine qua non. Once you enter into the system, they don't care whether you have your holiday on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday, where you worship in a mosque, in a synagogue, where you dress with kurta. That doesn't matter. What matters is the money. And all the constitutions, but understand, this is very important, all the constitutions create a system of monoculture regarding money, which establishes that the government has the monopoly, that there is a central bank, and there is a national debt. On the basis of that, they can run the show. So when the Islamic Republic of Pakistan comes into existence, and they declare for themselves that we want the Sharia to uphold the nation and this and that, all the story that came associated with it, they still put through in the Constitution, Article number 1, the Sharia is the most important law, Allah is the sovereign, blah, 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 blah. Amazing. The first article of the Constitution is almost all the time perfect. Bismillah. If it stops there.
Yeah.
But then you have Article 3 or 4 or 5, and you have a central bank, and then the next article, and then you have national debt, and then the government can tax you, and then you have paper money, which is a monopoly of the central bank, etc., etc., etc.
So it's already in ruin from day one.
What it means is that the Islam that they are putting in Article number 1 is already conditioned by these other three elements that they say. And you have to live, you have Islam, yes, but you have to live within the bars, the prism of what capitalism has to offer you. Mm-hmm. Now, inside this structure, you cannot Islamize a portion of it. You cannot have Islamic banking. It's like you have a soup of pork, and then you are concerned about what are the toppings, whether you put cheese or you put bacon. Mm-hmm. It's already haram, the system. Mm-hmm. So riba understood only as a contract is already misleading, because today riba has become a system, a legal system, a political system, a social system, and economic system. So you have to see it as a whole. Not only that, you have to see the whole consistency of the system, but if you are to provide solutions, you cannot answer in terms of contracts. You have to answer in terms of another system. Now, this seems like an impossibility, since what we are told is, especially after the end of the Cold War, capitalism has finally triumphed, it's the end of history, we have arrived to the nirvana of times. But that's not the case. Capitalism is in fact cracking down, as it always does, in the continuous crisis and boom, growth, crash, both boom, crash, etc. That has been always the history. And we are now in just another episode of this. But to understand what is other than capitalism, all you have to go is before banking comes into place. And what you have is all pre-capitalist societies have certain elements that they characterize what is a natural society. What do you find there? You find what Islam stands for. It's an economy based on trading. The fundamental element that conforms society, the economic life of people, is a healthy, level playing field of trading. In other words, public marketplaces. Public marketplaces, this is the key element.
Not privatized like the supermarket, because that's a private marketplace.
You cannot privatize it.
Yeah.
And if you decide to privatize the marketplace, you are killing the system at the heart of it, which is the souk. Now, the Muslims don't know about this. They totally forgotten about this. But the most important institution of muamalat, what we call the system of muamalat, is the souk. Then you have the caravans. The caravans, which you find in Medina too, is the first guild of traders. That is, the people naturally, spontaneously coming together from different professions simply because it's more effective for people to come together in order to share means of production, a sawmill for a group of carpenters than each one of them buying one. Then the warehousing, the purchasing of the materials, etc. Throughout history you find the formation of guilds. In all pre-capitalist societies you find guilds. And in Medina you find guilds too. Throughout all the period from Medina until the Ottomans, You go to Istanbul at the very end of the caliphate and you find 95% of the people.
So there is a system that exists that can run the world in a way that's not the way that, basically everywhere we go at the moment, all we find is a capitalist system that's been Islamicized, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is only just the result of being conditioned into accepting.
It's right from Pakistan, right from the constitution, right from day one. It was already a foregone conclusion that this country is going to be a ruin because the constitution, it's been structured that way from day one, right?
That's right.
But I got into an Uber yesterday. This guy goes to work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He finishes at 9 o'clock. That's his day job. He has an hour break. Then he does Uber till 5 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't see his wife and kids all week. He does it 7 days a week. And somebody like him just thinks, the state of Malaysia is a mess, or if let's say it's in Pakistan or Dubai. But clearly there have been socio-economic porn moves or something that's happened that's put him in that state, right? How do you get somebody like that to understand that the state that you find yourself in isn't just market forces or some sort of chance, that this is clearly a manufactured situation?
Completely.
We're in extreme, even though we're in comfort, we're actually in extreme poverty.
Absolutely, completely. I mean, in the middle of plenty, we have poverty.
Yeah.
It's outrageous, it's crazy, but it's not natural. They are telling us that this is just market forces and that you have to swallow it up. But it's the complete ignorance of how the things should operate. The fundamentals of this are not difficult to understand. The fundamentals of this is banking. The problem is banking. Banking is a form of usury. It's a modern form of usury, which consists of the capacity of private companies, banks, to create credit out of nothing. Mm. The capacity to create money ex nihilo given to private banks. Now, when you create more money, you put it into circulation, the value of the money always goes down. That's called inflation. Inflation is a tax on people. Mm. When private companies are the ones that they are enforcing the tax on people, this is private tax. Mm. We are taxed by private companies.
The government tax isn't the biggest deal.
It's not the biggest deal. It's in fact the banking. The banking is the biggest factor. But
can I ask you about the criminals? A lot of people right now, they're very angry at the companies that aren't paying tax. Cafe Nero hasn't paid their tax, Google's not paid their tax, or the 1% is hoarding all the wealth. That's not really the issue then, is it?
No, not really, although...
It is an issue, but that's a symptom of the...
You cannot say it's not an issue because it is also an issue, the corruption that the system has. But it's self-generated.
Yeah.
The biggest problem comes on the criminality, the theft that is legal.
Yeah, it's legal theft through inflation.
Exactly, it's the fraud that is legal, the how it operates, how it is allowed, and yet nobody calls it a fraud. Mm. Although you will find that throughout the history of capitalism there has been those people that they have criticized banking from the very beginning. Mm. Okay, and the Muslims simply they have found themselves at the tailgate of these affairs and today completely confused between Islamic banking and the overwhelming position of the ulama who ignore the subject. They don't know what to think. Mm. But to understand the core of the matter, which is the key, because if we understand the key, then we can offer solutions. Just ultimately the purpose of any form of knowledge. Mm. How do we get rid of capitalism? The bank is capable, this private company is capable of creating currency out of nothing. Mm. But that creates robbery from the people. It's like a vacuum cleaner collecting from everybody. And then it allocates this accumulated new money to particular individuals. Mm. So these particular individuals find themselves with billions collected from...
If you take the case of Pakistan, that's taking place, though, isn't it?
If you take the case of Pakistan, it's millions of people being taxed with inflation. It's about 14% nowadays. It's not nothing. Mm. And the same, it goes to this friend, to this guy, to this guy, to this guy, to this guy. 1,500 companies have 80% of the deposits in Pakistan. Mm.
They have the wealth that's been robbed.
They have all the wealth, and it keeps flowing that way. So it creates an equilibrium continuously. Mm. Now, this person is not a question of taxation, because you don't have nothing to tax this guy. Mm. He's been taxed by inflation. by inflation and by the lack of equal opportunities. Because this person cannot enter into a job unless somebody who collects the credit is capable of granting to him. Now, the question of inflation, it has been misunderstood even by great thinkers like Proudhon, who thought, well, inflation taxes the people who have more money more than the people who have little money. If I have 1 rupee or if I have 1 billion rupee. But that's not really the issue. The issue is that when you are in debt, inflation works in your favor. So inflation subsidizes credit. And since the credit massively is mobilized for those companies or individuals that they have most money, credit goes to money, money goes to money. Then what you find is that inflation is subsidizing the loan. So if the inflation is 10% and the interest rate is 10%, at the end of the year, it's like you pay 0 because it's cancelled with the inflation. So it works in the favor of borrowing. And that's why it's a perfect system, because if you don't form part of the credit, you lose. So the good Muslim who says, no, I don't want to borrow, he's the perfect victim. He simply falls into the category of being taxed with no benefit whatsoever. So either you join the system or you lose. That's why it perpetuates. There's no way around it. Now, what needs to be done? Capitalism has to be seen as the biggest problem of Islam. Allah speaks very strongly on the matter. Allah has declared war on riba. And that means...
But we are defining riba as the central banking paper money system. It's not just the interest, right? It's the whole system of banking, and because riba is always seen as just interest, but it's not understood.
It's not only interest. It's also the riba al-nasi and riba al-fadl. If we had more time, we will explain this in detail, but I encourage you to go on. And if you follow the 1,000 lectures I've given on the subject, you can see that there is a difference. There is another type of riba al-nasiya, that it takes place is increase of time. Is to introduce time into the matter. It's a question of ein and dain. It's something physical and something which is a promissory note. I promise to pay
in time. That's where the riba is.
There is
because all the paper money is promissory, therefore it's with time, therefore it's riba.
The use of a promissory note in order to purchase something which is tangible there, of the same quality, is riba itself. But the practice of creating credit and introducing the credit as a means of payment is a fraud altogether. The imposition of these credits as a means of payment by force, by law, is also against Islamic law, because it breaks the fundamental principle of freedom, of tijaratun an taradin minkum. For many reasons it's haram. And the matter has been analyzed, but the point I want to make is Allah has declared war on riba. Harb min Allahi wa rasuli. Now, when Allah declares war on something, how long do you think it takes Allah to win the battle?
Milliseconds.
Half an hour? A millisecond is too long. It's bang. When Allah says that is done. So it means that we are fighting not a force, but a ruin. It's already the battle has already been won. Riba doesn't have power. It's the absence.
But we have a fear of it, though, don't we? We fear the central banking system. We fear that this big, ginormous institution, this gargantuan...
So all you have to do is to move out. We give power to the dollar when we say it has power.
Intellectually, we give power to it.
Like an icon, if you say this is God, and then you say the glass of water is God, then whatever the water does, it will affect everything in my life. But if you say this is a piece of paper, it's actually a worthless piece of paper, then the US dollar will last exactly less than 24 hours. All you have to do is to move away from it. And what we are told is that cannot happen. That is impossible. So what does it take? It takes a group of people who say, I don't need you. And to establish gold and silver again is the same. It takes the same amount of courage that the people who introduce bitcoins. They say, I don't need the US dollar. We can do something better.
And today, it can be done, and they've proved it.
Of course it can be done. You have all the technology today to introduce a payment based on gold and silver. Instead of the Bitcoin, which still remains, you have to believe in this unit, and it depends on a number of people that they have to be supporting. When you buy a piece of gold, it's like a piece of potato. It doesn't have anybody's belief. You buy a potato, it's a potato.
And you own it.
You buy a gold, it's a piece of gold. and but the technical system that supports the payment system will be very similar. It's already created.
But
already
now,
technology there.
we talked about this yesterday, there's so many people that are distracted with these other issues, like, sending aid to Syria, and not that these issues aren't important, sending aid to, supporting Palestine and Islamophobia and all this kind of stuff, and not that any of these issues are important, but clearly that seems to be a distraction because the brokerage of power seems to be here, right? Like, those things are going to never stop unless we come here and change something.
Of course, it's a distraction. So if anybody wanted to free Palestine, all you have to do is to end capitalism. If you eliminate capitalism, you liberate all the lands of Islam. Because the problem is not in Palestine. The problem is in Pakistan. And in Saudi Arabia. Is that they are ruled by capitalism. The capitalism that you find, the ATMs that you find in Islamabad, they are the same ones that you would find in Dallas or in Paris or anywhere else. The national debt, the principle of national debt is identical in Iran as it is in Malaysia, as it is in Congo. The system is identical. The mortgages are exactly the same, etc., etc., etc. The credit cards, blah, blah, blah. So what you need is to identify the cause, the fundamental problem that we have today. Your first question: what is the fitna? What is the cause of the fitna? Which is riba, and then apply.
That's the greatest fitna of today, right? Riba.
It's the biggest problem today. Yes,
it's not the hijab and the.
It's not the hijab, for God's sake.
It's not the adab and the characters and the manners and the.
Look, listen to the
promiscuity and all these, because there's just things with personal morality.
Distractions. The hadith of Rasulullah. Riba is 70 times worse than incest with your mother. And the little commentaries. What is 70 times worse than that? It's already... So, it makes incest nothing. So, it makes a woman running naked in the street nothing in comparison to this.
Yeah,
so, what is about the hijab, or, I can see the hair. It's just a distraction. And there's a fundamental principle in the law that says, first, eliminate the biggest problem, and then eliminate the smaller problems, which is quite logical. If you're in a house, and your house is in fire, you don't start painting the windows.
No. Even
though the windows may need to be painted, because it's suicidal.
Yeah.
So when you are facing a problem of this nature, you have to address the problem at first. It has to be the core of the activity. Well, as long as the Muslims keep distracted with 1,000 issues, then we lose focus on the matter. We keep losing, as we keep losing continuously. But we also not only lose in terms of ourselves, but we lose in relation to the non-Muslims who have now taken a very belligerent position against us. All this Islamophobic movement that is growing in the West, it should be a call for all of us to change our ghetto, self-oriented, self-defense
idea
practices and transform it into something else. We have to stop saying what we are not. We are not terrorists, we are not bad guys, we are not people of the past.
It's about what we want and what we're going to
But we have to be part of the solution. We have to, if we are living in the West, we have to become part of the helping the people, not just us.
But that help can't be giving them charity and homelessness and this. It has to
fighting capitalism.
Yeah, it has
as
to
simple
be
as that.
Economic
the
help.
Muslims should be the front line of fighting capitalism in the West, helping the people to get rid of capitalism, and then you will find that we are part. Then we are in the front line. Then we will have sympathy from them, and actually we will have a voice because Islam defines not only just what is anti-capitalism, but much more important, what is the alternative? We have the blueprint. Unlike the kuffar do not have. They can tell you capitalism is bad, but when it comes to the answers, to the alternatives, what is the solution? You find a lot of different versions. We have the blueprint of the perfect version of this, which is, again, public marketplaces, guilds, gold and silver. And many other elements would conform the what we call muamalat, the whole 2/3 of the Islamic law. That is the heart of the affair, the amal, the practice of Islam.
The personal morality element is like the 1/3 of it, which is what's the thing that's discussed the most at the moment, right? Everybody's discussing personal morality, where you're saying muamalat, the socio-economic elements, are the 2/3 of Islamic law.
I mean, that everybody can check it out. And it has been eliminated altogether. It has been, and if you look at wherever there is a constitution, you will find that all the economic aspects, all the economic life, all the social life, and a great deal of the political life is constructed on the basis of secular, Western secular philosophies. And I mean, the case of Pakistan is just the perfect scenario, because what you have is 80% of the laws were inherited from the East India Company. Pakistan is the East India Company number 2. There is no independence. Independence has never taken place. What you have is a reconstruction of the same system of theft that destroyed the richest country in the world, which was Hindustan, with 1/4 of the GDP of the world, was in Hindustan, the richest country in the world, transforming to one of the poorest by this evil cartel called the East India Company, by the most evil people, which are this British nation, for what they've done to the world. And this same system of theft was transplanted into the newly created Pakistan, with the same system of banking, national debt, and paper money, which therefore allowed 22 families to own 80% of the wealth of Pakistan up until today. Within the shortest period of time, the same situation that we were suffering with the East India Company was transplanted into New Pakistan. But now, instead of having one guy with the white face coming from Sussex, now is a Pakistani guy from one of the 22 families, most of them Ismailis and funny little sects, because they were the collaborating families, that they own Pakistan. They own Pakistan. And the people do not have a chance to progress. And if you don't want to see this, then you don't see anything at all. There is no justice, there is no Islam, there is nothing, while riba is perpetuated. And why do you think they hold Ali Jinnah in this state? Jinnah cannot be contested. Is higher than the Prophet. Is
revered more than the Prophet.
Is presented as a wali of Allah, etc. When he was clearly a secular guy, in love with the British, who never spoke Urdu, who was absolutely, totally uninterested in Islam. And he brought about, as a constitutionalist person that he was, he did exactly what he believed in. He believed in constitutions. And he created a constitution for Pakistan that granted that you have an Islamic label, but you have a capitalist practice. And he brought capitalism to Pakistan, which means his people, he was an Ismaili, the Aga Khan still is the big deal in Pakistan. Nobody can criticize Pakistan. I think I've been the only person who has openly criticized and said the central bank of Pakistan is haram, and the rupee is the biggest chori hai, inflation chori hai, and that the whole banking structure is the enemy of the people of Pakistan.